Lecture 1, Man and Civilization. In this lecture, we will focus on two fundamental realities that are foundational to this course, man and civilization. We will begin with the Catholic concept of what, or more properly, who is man. Then we will take a critical look at the discoveries of paleoanthropology, coming from two Greek words meaning the science of ancient man. In doing this, the following prehistoric ages will be introduced: Paleolithic, Neolithic, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. Since the Iron Age is generally considered the last prehistorical era before human history was recorded, we will then shift our attention to the study of civilization. The English word civilization is based on the Latin word civis. A civis was someone who lived in a city, civitas. The study of civilization, therefore, literally means the study of people living in a community, specifically a city. Civilizations that sprang up around cities are born, decline, and sometimes are regenerated. A number of theories explains these cycles. Man. The question of who we are is an essential one to answer when studying Western civilization from a Catholic perspective. According to official Catholic teaching, man is not simply different in degree from animals, rather, we are different in kind. In other words, we're not only highly evolved animals. Our ability to reason is not simply due to a slow process of evolution in which consciousness gradually developed. While certain forms of evolutionary theories are not contrary to Catholic teaching, it is contrary to church teaching to maintain that the process of evolution with respect to man lacked special divine intervention. As far back as the 1950s, Pope Pius XII, in his encyclical letter Humani Generis, affirmed that evolutionary theory is not contrary to Catholic teaching, but as long as it is believed that at some point in time God infused a soul into the first man and first woman. And in the transcript, I provide the key passage where he states that from Humani Generis. Similarly, Pope St. John Paul II stated in a general audience of April 16, 1986 that, and I want to quote this, very important, "It can therefore be said that from the viewpoint of the doctrine of the faith, there are no difficulties in explaining the origin of man in regard to the body by means of the theory of evolution. But it must be added that this hypothesis proposes only a probability, not a scientific certainty. However, the doctrine of faith invariably affirms that man's spiritual soul is created directly by God. According to the hypothesis mentioned, it is possible that the human body, following the order impressed by the Creator on the energies of life, could have been gradually prepared in the forms of antecedent living beings. However, the human soul on which man's humanity definitively depends cannot emerge from matter, since the soul is of a spiritual nature." End of quote. Due to the infusion of the soul, men and women are different in kind from animals who do not have a spiritual soul, and consequently lack the ability to reason. Human beings also are called to an end that we cannot obtain by our own efforts. More specifically, according to the Catholic faith, human beings were created for the end of heaven to be experienced in the beatific vision, which we cannot reach without the aid of divine grace. This final cause towards which we are to develop individually and corporately as a civilization profoundly distinguishes us from non-rational animals. Prehistoric eras. Prehistory refers to the period of time prior to written records. Note well that the absence of written historical records does not mean that all prehistorical ages were prior to the invention of writing. This is because the presence of a written language does not necessarily mean that those who use this language recorded history. Prehistorical time is typically broken up into three periods: Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. The Stone Age is divided into the Old Stone Age and the New Stone Age. During the last two ages, the Bronze and Iron Ages, writing was invented and developed. The dates used for all of these eras are approximate. Old Stone Age Paleolithic Age. During the Old Stone Age, and it's approximately 2.5 million years to 10,000 years BC, human beings were nomadic. They obtained their food by hunting and gathering, hence the name nomadic hunter-gatherers. Archaeologists have acquired evidence that indicate that these nomads used fire, clothing, and tools. New Stone Age, Neolithic Age. In the Neolithic Age, spanned from 10,000 to 3000 BC, some of the nomads settled down and began to farm, raise animals, and grow grain. Weapons for warfare were also made and used during this period. During the last phase of the Neolithic Age, human beings discovered how to use copper for tools. The Copper Age, or Chalcolithic Age, was replaced by the Bronze Age. Bronze Age. The main distinctive feature of the Bronze Age, this occurred from 3000 to 1000 BC approximately, was smelting of both copper and tin to combine two metals to create bronze, a metal that is harder than copper. During this age, writing was invented, but not necessarily used to record history. Iron Age. During the Iron Age, iron was smelted and then shaped into tools or weapons. Agricultural techniques continued to advance in this age. Civilization, birth, decline, and renewal. There are a variety of explanations for the births, declines, and renewals of the various civilizations that make up Western civilization. One ancient explanation was proposed by the Greek Stoic philosophers. They began to live in the 3rd century BC. The Stoics held that civilizations are fated to undergo historical cycles of birth, decline, death, and rebirth. In the first historical stage, the world emerges out of fire. This is followed by a period of growth according to an inner logic. Eventually, the ordered civilizations that develops out of a chaotic fire are once again immersed by flames in order for a new cycle to begin. The German historian Oswald Spengler modernized the Stoic concept of history and development of civilizations by comparing it to a biological organism that has a definite lifespan in which it is born, matures, and inevitably dies. A very different explanation from both the Stoics and Spengler is linear rather than cyclical. According to a linear understanding of civilizations, often influenced by Hegelian philosophy, while civilizations may rise and fall, the common thread that connects all of them is one of continual progress and improvement as inner conflicts within civilization are worked out. The Catholic spiral explanation of history acknowledges both the linear and cyclical concepts of history and civilization. According to this more spiral view of history, there is direction in history since God created time and destined all of history to be fulfilled in His Son, Jesus Christ, through the Holy Spirit who orders all things sweetly. Within this direction are periods of decline that can be due to sin or simply as a result of secondary natural causes that God permits in His providence to occur. In explaining God's creation, which includes creating out of nothing and sustaining all in existence with God's providence, Bishop Robert Barron writes, God's creativity and providence are necessarily expressions of the divine love and hence of the letting be of the other. The providential God is not one of great cause among many, interfering with the nexus of conditioned causes. We recall the language of the Book of Wisdom, how sweetly God exercises His power, operating precisely through the realm of secondary causes. If asked, how do you make a cherry pie, one would say, presumably, you bring together cherries, sugar, flour, water, fat, and the skill of a baker in the heat of the oven. Even the religious believer would not say, you bring together cherries, sugar, flour, God, water, fat, and the skill of the baker in the heat of the oven. God is not one cause among many, but rather the reason there are cherries, flour, water, fat, baker, and so on at all. Hence it is precisely through those causes, and not in competition with them, that the providential God works out His purposes. God bless.